Hello and welcome. Just going to give it just one moment to let everybody make sure everybody's connected and everybody can hear us and see us. But we're very excited for today's webinar. As I can see just a few more people joining there. Fantastic. Well, let's get started. Welcome everybody to today's webinar from FLR Spectron. From the headlines, Cybersecurity Lessons for Small and Mid-sized Businesses. It's great to have you all with us today. Before we jump into the case studies themselves, I'll just run through a very short bit of housekeeping. Comments have been disabled for today, but we do have the Q&A open. So if you have any questions, please do drop them into the question and answer section of the webinar. One of our team is monitoring and we'll come to all of the questions at the end of our presentation. We won't be monitoring for raised hands, so if there is anything you need support with, please drop it into that Q&A. Today's webinar is being recorded and the recording will be available to you after today. So you'll be able to share that, you'll be able to recap if there's anything you missed. Now, I know it was in the diary for an hour, but we are going to try, we're going to aim, if I can keep Cam and Damien in check, we're going to aim for 45 minutes today to give you a little bit of time back in your diaries at the end, but we'll see how we go. Throughout the next 45 minutes, I'll do a brief introduction to the team, and then we're going to be looking at these 5 case studies that made the headlines around the world. So we'll be talking about cybersecurity breaches at Marks and Spencer's, the Co-op Group, McDonald's, Samsung, and the design consultancy firm Arup. And in each of these case studies, we're going to focus on practical advice that you can implement in your business, even if you are not the size of Marks and Spencer's or McDonald's. So who's going to be talking to you today? My name's Laura Richards, and I'm an AI specialist working with FLR Spectron to help businesses understand what AI means for them. I'm joined today by 2 of our in-house experts, Cam.
Hi guys, my name's Kamran Bahadur, CIO for FLR Spectron.
And Damien.
Hi, I'm Damien Miles and I'm a security specialist at FLR Spectron.
Thank you, Cam. Thanks, Damien. So the 5 case studies we're going to look at today all made headlines around the world. Some of them you will have heard of, others might be a little bit more surprising, but we're going to be thinking about what lessons we can take from these giants to apply to our own businesses. We're going to start with Marks and Spencer's. Now, I'm sure most of you heard about this breach. It dominated headlines throughout spring this year. M&S is a British institution, it's 140 years old, and it was brought to its knees for 4 months. And this is what made this particular attack particularly interesting. The attackers didn't actually break into Marks and Spencer's systems. They used a phone call to gain access. So in February 2025, a hacker group called Scattered Spider impersonated a Marks and Spencer's employee, and they were able to gain access to Marks and Spencer's IT systems by calling up a third-party service desk. Now, the attackers didn't jump straight into action. They actually stayed within Marks and Spencer's system for 3 months, mapping out the network. The first signs of an issue didn't occur until Easter weekend. So in April of this year, customers started to report disruptions. By the 22nd of April, Marks and Spencer's had confirmed that there had been a cyber incident. And by the 25th of April, online orders had been suspended across the clothing and home departments. Now, on the 13th of May, Marks and Spencer's confirmed that there had been a data breach and 9.4 million customer records had been stolen. Marks and Spencer's online systems were offline for months. They had expected to recover by June or July, but it actually took them until August to do a full system restoration. Now, the impact on Marks and Spencer's was huge. They lost £300 million as a result of the breach, and their market value dropped by £1 billion. And you could argue that actually that trust with customers is still being rebuilt today. So what can smaller businesses learn from Marks and Spencer's? There are 3 lessons here for business leaders. The first is that You must verify your supply chain. Third-party companies that have access to your system need active management. How are they protecting your systems? Lesson number 2, you need to make sure that the security you have in place actually works. You can't prioritize convenience, for example, making it easier to reset a password with a phone call, over verification. And lesson number 3 is that the training that you have in place needs to be updated for AI threats. That traditional phishing and cyber awareness training isn't enough anymore. So to explore this in a little bit more detail, I want to bring in one of our experts. Cam, the attackers in this case bypassed Marks and Spencer's security by targeting their third-party service desk. What does this tell us about where SME leaders should be focusing?
Thanks, Laura. Good question, and a couple of points I want to talk about. I want to start off with SME leaders need to focus on identity verification. Specifically, how things like password resets are handled. This can be an internal issue, or like in the M&S example, a third-party supplier that makes you vulnerable. What does that mean? How do we do that at FLR? So FLR, we use SSPR, that's self-service password reset. So instead of resetting passwords over the phone, we send a secure link that verifies identity first. That stops no voice calls. No matter how convincing you sound, it doesn't bypass that process. Verification must happen every time, even for senior staff. And if I'm honest with you, Laura, and for everyone out there, there is no exception. This is what we do. We test our own service desk. Even when the CEO calls asking for a password reset, the team sends the SSPR link. We do the same for our biggest client. No matter who's calling, the process has to be followed. And the last bit I want to add, convenience is the enemy of security. Thanks, Laura.
Amazing. Thanks, Cameron. I think some really, really important points there, and especially around it needs to not matter who's calling up, the process still needs to remain the same. Now, this brings us nicely onto our second case study. Just days after the Marks and Spencer's breach, another British institution made the headlines, and the same hacker group attacked a second supermarket. So just days after those headlines had made the press, Co-op announced that they had also been breached. But there was a critical difference in this case with the Co-op group. Co-op had invested in security monitoring, which meant that their systems, their security and monitoring systems, were able to detect unusual behaviour so that the security team was aware of the breach as it was happening, before any ransomware could be deployed. The Co-op group made the decision to take their own system offline. They effectively pulled their own plug rather than waiting for the hackers to cause more damage. Now, this still caused a lot of disruption. By the end of April, they had to suspend their systems. They were seeing disruption in their stock management, in their supplier ordering. But because they controlled the process, they were able to have a much faster recovery. So by May, they already announced that they were in recovery. In June, they did disclose that 6.5 million customer records had still been affected by the breach. But overall, they had a much quicker, they were able to restore their system much quicker, being back online by June. And rather than experiencing that £300 million loss that Marks and Spencer's experienced, their loss was limited to 800 million. So that rapid detection and action arguably saved them over £200 million. So what does this teach us about what we can be doing with our security as smaller businesses? The first lesson is have a pull the plug plan. Do you know what you would do before a crisis hits? Do your team know what they would need to do if a crisis hits? Lesson number 2 is that businesses should be investing in detection, not just prevention. You need to be able to spot breaches if they do get through your defenses in order to save the millions of pounds or the extent of the damage, as we saw with Co-op Group. And lesson number 3 is you should be rehearsing for the crisis. It's no good having an incident response that sits in a drawer somewhere and you never look at it. You need to be testing your incident response under pressure. So how can smaller businesses build this type of capability internally? Damien, I'd love to bring you in to explain a little bit more. Co-op invested in detection technologies, which saved them millions of pounds compared to Marks and Spencer's. But can you just tell us a little bit, what is the difference between prevention and detection technology?
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so prevention stops attacks before they happen, using tools like firewalls, antivirus, multi-factor authentication. And detection spots attacks that get through the prevention measures. That's what saved the Co-op. So key detection technologies include things like MDR, which provides 24/7 monitoring of endpoints, and SIM, which collects logs from multiple sources and spots unusual patterns within that data. So Co-op had this monitoring in place. That's how they caught the breach in progress and were able to pull the plug before ransomware was deployed. And another thing to note is you don't need to have enterprise budgets in place to get these detection tools. So for example, FLR uses Huntress, which layers MDR and SIM detection over antivirus.
Amazing, thank you. And I'm sure that is very reassuring for a lot of the people on the call today. So our next case study is perhaps a little less well known than Marks and Spencer's and the Co-op Group, but it's one that shows that even with things like cutting edge AI technology, it's often the basics that fail us. So in this case study, we're going to hear how McDonald's outsourced the development of their hiring platform, so a platform to manage their recruitment, to a third party. And it was an AI tool that promised efficiency and innovation, but ultimately what this case study shows is that even cutting edge AI technology companies can forget the basics, like forgetting to change a password. So this example, this breach actually started a little while ago. It started back in 2019 when McDonald's outsourced the development of their hiring platform to a company called Paradox AI. And the platform was called McHire, the assistant, the agent name was Olivia. And when Paradox AI was setting up Olivia, they created an admin account with the credentials 123456 for the username and password for the password. And this account then stayed active but forgotten about from 2019 until 2025, when in June, 2 independent security researchers started investigating the McHire platform after seeing lots of complaints about it on Reddit. Now, within 30 minutes of signing up to McHire, these security researchers had gained access to that forgotten admin account, and within hours had discovered that they could actually access any applicant's data. So that was 64 million people's records that were exposed. Now, fortunately, in this example, these were ethical researchers, and they reported it immediately to McDonald's and to Paradox AI. So Paradox AI took that admin account offline, they fixed the vulnerability the next day. But what if that had been bad actors, a group of criminals that were trying to exploit this particular system? It shows that there was a massive security failure where basic password hygiene was failed from a supplier that really should have known better. So McDonald's in this case had outsourced part of its technology, part of its IT infrastructure to a third-party vendor, which is something that most businesses do. So what can we learn from this case study as business leaders? So the first lesson is that you need to vet your vendors thoroughly, especially for new AI tools. That same procurement rigor or procurement process that you use for any other software or supplier needs to apply. Lesson number 2 is that basic security hygiene still matters. So you need to be thinking about default passwords, forgotten accounts, so that they don't cause you that vulnerability. And lesson number 3 is that you are ultimately responsible. So even if a third party is the cause of a breach, your business is still responsible for that. In the McDonald's instance, McDonald's had to take responsibility. They came out publicly and took responsibility, even though technically it was Paradox AI that had that lapse of security. So I'd love to bring Cam in here just to understand a little bit more about how we can prevent this. So Cam, McDonald's, as we said, was ultimately responsible, even though it was a supplier of theirs. How can business leaders manage third-party security?
Thanks, Laura. I want to start off with businesses need to treat their vendors' security as their own responsibility. And I feel that's very, very important. Actively auditing their practices, not just trusting that they've got it covered. Second point is be proactive, not reactive. So what we mean by that is monthly password resets, service accounts, reviews, and API audits. As at FLR, we do a 30-day password rotation for all our third-party access. Even secure passwords become risky if they've never been reset, or have they been leaked? Could they have been shared with other suppliers' team? These are the type of questions we should be asking. You should be asking the vendors, what are your security policies and how do you verify identity? The big one for me is, when did you last audit dormant accounts? Thanks, Laura.
Thanks. And again, I think this is something that most of us have probably come across at some point in our careers, those accounts that get set up, those passwords that get shared amongst a team before you've got systems and policies in place. So really great advice there, thank you. Now this next case study looks again at the human element of security breaches. McDonald's breach was accidental, and fortunately it was researchers that found it. But what happens when employees use approved tools, but without really understanding what they're using? So this next case study, I think, surprises quite a lot of people. Samsung is a global technology leader. We would feel like they should understand cybersecurity. And yet, within 20 days of approving ChatGPT use within Samsung, they ended up with 3 major data leaks. And this was not because anyone hacked in or anyone exploited this. This was just teams of engineers trying to do their jobs better. So this case study starts back in April 2023, when Samsung approved the use of ChatGPT for some employees in their semiconductor division, one of their departments. So this wasn't shadow AI use. This wasn't people unofficially using AI tools. This was something that Samsung had said was okay to happen. But within 20 days, there were 3 separate data leaks identified. So in the first, an engineer had entered some code for a faulty piece of equipment, asking ChatGPT for a fix. In the second, an engineer had uploaded the details of some equipment, asking how to optimize it. And the third, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call will recognize this as something that might happen in your own business, but an employee had uploaded the recording of an internal meeting asking for a summary. Now, I'm sure all 3 of those employees just felt like they were being efficient and didn't understand the risk. But Samsung's investigation confirmed that the data that was uploaded is now permanently stored in OpenAI, so that's the company behind ChatGPT, in OpenAI's training data. Samsung can't get that data back. So in May of 2023, Samsung ended up banning all generative AI tools. So that meant no ChatGPT, no Google Bard, no Bing on any company devices. And they then spent the next 2 years, from May 2023 to May 2025, building their own proprietary AI chatbot to try and allow the benefits of AI for some of their team members. Now, we did hear earlier this year, around May, that Samsung was starting to lift that ban, and it was partially lifted for certain teams with very strict controls. So they were introducing things like mandatory training, and sensitive departments were still restricted from using generative AI. But it took them 2 years to get to a point where they had this secure alternative. Now, I feel like this is one of those instances that most businesses are now dealing with. AI tools promise huge efficiencies, but how can we make sure that they are being used safely and not risking leaking our data? So the first lesson from the Samsung case study is that free tools use your data as their product. Right? You really need to understand what free means if you're allowing your team members, your employees to use free AI tools. Lesson number 2 is that you really need to be training your staff before rolling out AI. People can have the best intentions, but if they don't understand the technology they're using, it can lead to these really serious incidents. And lesson number 3 is that there are secure alternatives available, and you should be using them wherever possible. So that might be an enterprise tool, or it might be a third-party tool still, but with proper configuration in place. So to help us understand a little bit more about how we can use AI safely within our businesses, I'd like to bring Damien in here. So Damien, can we dig into this a bit more? Samsung, big technology company, global leader, they had approved ChatGPT for their team, but what has become apparent through this case study is that they obviously hadn't trained their staff properly. Why are free AI tools so risky in particular, and what do businesses need to know?
Okay, so free tools are free because you're part of the product. Your inputs, the data you upload, your questions, they train their models and improve their products. So everything uploaded is processed in the cloud, stored on their servers, and potentially used for training. As you've said, once you've uploaded it, you can't get it back. So Samsung engineers thought, I'm just asking for help. They didn't realise they were giving away their intellectual property, which shows even technical people don't understand this intuitively. So the solution, it's not banning AI. As you said, it's training staff first, being clear about what should and shouldn't be uploaded, having company policies in place, wherever possible, using secure enterprise alternatives where your data stays yours and within your region.
Amazing, thanks, Damien. And again, I feel like this is one of those really topical examples that businesses up and down the country are asking about and trying to grapple with. So thanks for that advice there. Okay, so we've seen case studies where technical breaches caused issues. We've seen case studies where human error have caused issues. But what happens when technology is actually designed to deceive humans? Our final case study today shows the cutting edge of cyber threats. So Arup is a global design firm, and in January 2024, so last year, a phishing email appeared in one of the inboxes of a member of their finance team. This email appeared to be from the UK CFO of Arup, and it asked the employee to make a confidential financial transaction. Now, in the first instance, this employee was rightly suspicious. They doubted the authenticity of this email, and they had had training to spot phishing emails or to spot cyber attack emails, and that training had worked. But the attackers then took this attempt to access their finances up a level, and the attackers invited this employee to join them on a video call. Now, on that video call, the employee saw and heard perfect replicas of their UK CFO and other team members. So they were talking to, or they thought they were talking to, their colleagues. All of those team members, that the CFO and other team members, had been generated using Deepfake technology. Now, the employee was convinced, right? They trusted their eyes, they trusted their ears. This looked and sounded real. And as a result, they went on to make 15 separate payments to 5 different accounts. And the total amount that they transferred was $25.6 million, which was about £20 million at the time. Now, this fraud was then only discovered when the employee was at headquarters and mentioned it to a colleague. Off the back of that, Arup launched an investigation and reported it to the police in Hong Kong, where this had taken place. But as of today, as of the time of this webinar, there's been no update on whether or not anyone or any group of hackers have been charged with this fraud. Now, what's interesting in this example is that there was no technical breach. The hackers didn't break in technically. This was purely a social engineering attack, but it was using the latest AI technology to get through the defenses that have been put in place. And what it shows us is that traditional security mechanisms aren't fit for purpose against this level of sophistication when it comes to AI and cybersecurity attacks. Now, what would your team do if they saw you or your CFO on a video call requesting that they make really large transfers, thousands or even millions of pounds to unknown accounts? And there are a few things I think we can learn from this case study. So the first lesson we can take from the Arup example here is that we need to be updating our verification processes, okay? Deepfake technology has the ability to override those traditional controls. So what you see might not be real, and you need to have processes in place that allow for that. We can do this by training people to trust process, not people. Okay? Your teams need to know that they have to follow the process regardless of who is asking them to transfer money or to give access to a particular system, regardless of who they think that is. And lesson number 3 is to consider where else identity matters. In this example, it was a financial breach, but identity breaches can have impacts across access, approval, contracts. So where else might an attack like this be a vulnerability for your business? I'd love to bring Damien in here just to explore this a little bit more, because if I'm honest, I think this example sounds like something out of science fiction, but it actually happened at the beginning of 2024, right? It's not even that new. It shows that deepfake technology now is sophisticated enough that it can fool anyone. Damien, how do businesses protect against this type of attack?
Well, traditional training doesn't work anymore because obviously people trust what they see and hear. The Arup employees, their initial suspicion was correct, but the deepfake video call overwrote their judgment. So now training must get staff to focus on context over content. So they need to ask questions like, does this request make sense? Is this how we normally approve payments? The emphasis needs to be that it's okay and expected to pause for human verification. So for example, a phone call back to a known number, an in-person check, even a pre-agreed safe word for high-value requests.
Amazing. And so it feels like attacks are getting more sophisticated. In this instance, it was purely a social engineering attack. But as we've seen in some of the other case studies, social engineering is often then combined with quite sophisticated technology-based attacks or technical attacks. Are there any technology-based defenses that businesses should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, there's many, but one big shift is moving away from SMS codes for multi-factor authentication. So instead, phishing-resistant MFA uses passkeys linked to biometrics like fingerprints or physical tokens. So there's nothing for an attacker to intercept. We're actually trialing this right now, and we're looking at how physical tokens could be used to authenticate shared workstations or devices. And this shift is recommended by Microsoft. Amazing.
So that this is becoming industry standard, not just an FLR Spectron recommendation. We're going to see this, I guess, more and more across businesses.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so that's been our 5 case studies. We've seen hundreds of millions of pounds losses, millions and millions of customer data and customer records stolen. But what are the common threads? What can we learn if we look at these 5 case studies all together? When we were analysing these case studies, we realised that there were 4 critical lessons that emerged from all of them. And I just want to run through those now. So there are 4 key risks that we think that all business leaders really need to be aware of today. The first is that now more than ever, your supply chain makes you vulnerable. You are, as a business, you are only as secure as your weakest vendor. And sometimes we hear smaller firms saying, oh, look, we're too small, we're not Marks and Spencer's, we're not the Co-op, we're not going to be, no one's going to try and break into us. But we are starting to see smaller firms targeted because of who they are working with. Lesson number 2 is that attackers aren't breaking in anymore. More often than not, they are actually logging into your system. They are using stolen credentials. They are using these very sophisticated phishing campaigns, or they're using social engineering to walk into your system. Lesson number 3 is that AI is bringing new risks. It's making it easier than ever for people to carry out attacks. And that is both attackers using AI to increase the scale or the severity of what they're doing, of their attack, but also from well-meaning staff accidentally exposing data through the use of free tools. And lesson number 4 is that your basic security measures are no longer enough. As technology is becoming more advanced and cyber attacks are therefore becoming far more sophisticated, your security and your training needs to be updated. It needs to keep pace. I think this sounds like a lot. This sounds like it sounds quite overwhelming, but fortunately, Cam, you have developed a handy 3-step framework, haven't you? Could you just maybe talk us through those 3 steps or 3 phases that businesses can work through to update their security?
No problem at all. Thanks, Laura. So number 1 is understand your risk. Now, what does that mean? This landscape changes monthly, and we have to be honest, you can't keep up alone. You need a partner who lives and breathes this daily, whether that's an MSP or a specialist security team. And if I can say, who better than FLR Spectron? If you don't know where your vulnerabilities are, you can't protect against them. So that's understanding your risk. Your second one is build your defenses. That's not just antivirus anymore. You need a SIEM for log monitoring, MDR for 24/7 detection, and proper backup and recovery. So you can actually go back, you can test it, everything works as it should do. Think like Co-op, not M&S. Co-op invested in detection and saved 220 million. That investment's paid for itself many times over. Most importantly, layer your defenses. No single tool protects everything. And third and final, prepare your people. Training isn't a once-a-year video anymore like it used to be. Ongoing awareness about phishing, deepfakes, AI risk, and when to pause and verify before acting. And this is the most important for me, Laura, and for everyone on the call. Your people are your last line of defense and often your first points of vulnerability. Thanks, Laura.
Amazing. Amazing. Thanks, Cam. And I think that final point there, we absolutely see that in some of these case studies. So if you think about even the Arup case study on its own, initially the training kicked in, initially that finance employee was a line of security, a line of defense, but because that training hadn't been updated to reflect and to protect against deepfake attacks, they then became the source of that breach and the source of that vulnerability. So really, really valuable advice there. Thank you. We do now have time for some questions, so I'd love to open this up to people on the call. The Q&A is open. Our team is monitoring it. So if you've got questions, please do drop them in. Oh, just have a little look to see what's coming through. Just a note to our team. I don't know if people are able to access the Q&A. Sorry, everybody, just we do have tech support on the call, and obviously in any webinar about technology, there is going to be some sort of little tech glitch. But if one of our team could just take a look and see if we can turn the Q&A on for everyone, that would be great. Oh, lovely. Okay, so I've got a note from our team. Sorry, the Q&A doesn't seem to be working, but the chat has been turned on. So if you've got a question, please do drop it into the chat now. We will, like I say, we've got about 10 minutes for some questions. If we have more questions and we've got time to get through, what we will do is we will follow up with everybody after today's webinar. So we can come back over email. The team will get some additional information out to everyone alongside the recording. Amazing. Okay, brilliant. So I can see a question that's come through. We've got started getting some questions through. So brilliant. John, I'll come to your question first. You were quick off the draw there. This all sounds expensive. Co-op clearly invested heavily in detection yet, but how can smaller businesses afford this level of protection? That's a great question. Cam, can I come to you on that one, please?
Sure.
So how can smaller businesses afford this sort of protection?
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for the question. The good news is you don't need a co-op size budget to get a co-op level protection. It scales to your size and your risk. So not one size fits all. And the way we recommend you do this is start with your biggest risk first. Third-party access, MFA, training. You don't need to do everything on day one because you'd never get through to it. Our approach to proactive securely covers the essentials for less than the cost of one breach. Most important bit here is co-op's investment saved them over 200 million. The question isn't, can you afford this? It's, can you afford not to? Thanks, Laura.
I think Laura just dropped off. I think we'll hold for a few seconds. So...
Okay.
Stop playing 1 sec. Hi guys, I think Laura has just dropped off. Just hold for a few minutes. We'll be back, I guess. Rejoin it back. Yeah. No, I have another account. 33 I have.
Cam, Damien,
Laura...
there are some questions in the chat. If you can read
Yeah.
them, do you want to pick a couple out to answer while Laura's just having challenges?
Sure.
Sure.
I've got
one for you, maybe, Cam, but
yeah, if I can take that one. So one of the questions that's just come through, guys, we've heard today that third-party suppliers are often the weak point. How do we know which suppliers to trust with our security? To be blunt, why should we trust that you're any different? It's a very good question. Thanks, Damon. I'll take this one if that's all right. Again, great question. And honestly, I'm obviously going to say that you should work with us, right? But let me tell you why, because I'm sure we all would. For me, it comes down to two things: the type of relationship you have with your supplier and how they stay ahead of new threats. Relationship. A lot of managed service providers will do exactly what's in the contract and nothing more. We at FLR don't work like that. If we're going to be looking at your 365 environment, we're not just checking the box. We're looking at what's around it. What else might be exposed? We want a long-term relationship. Your infrastructure becomes ours to protect. We at FLR, we're a family-oriented business, and that shows in how we treat our clients. The bigger some providers get, the smaller their customers feel. We've seen that happen, and we don't want to be that. Staying ahead. We're also testing all the time. We've got test environments where our security team is trying out new tools and staying ahead of what attackers are doing. And that's really, really important because we need to be ahead of the game. Something that we're doing currently at FLR, we've just taken a recording of my voice in particular, and we've created an AI deepfake of it. We're going to use that to call our own service desk at 3 a.m. and ask for a password reset. See if the team follows the process, and when the CIO calls, that's the kind of attack that's happening now, and we need to be ready for it. So to answer your question directly, look for a supplier who treats your security like their own and who's already testing themselves against the attacks before someone else does. That's what we do best. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Sorry about that, everybody. I don't know what happened, but hopefully I am back and there won't be any further issues. Lovely. So great to see so many questions coming in. I think we'll probably keep it to one more question for now, and then we'll, as I've said, we'll come back to everybody who we don't get to their questions over email, so that we can provide some further information and some follow-up. So just as a final question to wrap up today, I'll come to Henry's question, because I think this is probably quite a nice one and possibly covers a few of the other questions that we've seen. Henry's asking, this has been really useful. What's the one thing that they should do first after today's webinar? Damien, can I come to you there, please?
Sure, thanks. Okay, probably the most important that I would do is run a phishing simulation to test your team. So see who clicks. Also, if you haven't already, implement MFA everywhere. Lastly, audit your third-party access. So what access do they have? Do they still need it? Are there dormant accounts sitting there forgotten? And obviously, if you'd like help with any of that, you can book a free one-hour consultation with us to help understand your infrastructure and where your risks may be. Thanks, Laura.
Amazing. And hopefully that answers some of that, might help answer some of the other questions that have come through around training and what people should be focusing on. And honestly, Damien, we couldn't have planned that better if we'd scripted it. If anybody does want to speak to anyone in the team, if you've got specific questions, and I know I can see in the chat that people are asking about their specific technology, their specific tools, their specific setup. If you do have specifics you want to talk to the team about, please do book in for a free 1-hour security review with the team. You can do that by emailing cybersecurity@flrs.co.uk. The QR code will ping that straight across to us, so you can send an email straight across. But we would love to speak to you to have a dig into your security, to dig into your situation, and to see where we can provide some advice. Okay. I cannot believe it that we are actually, we've managed to bring that in at pretty much exactly 45 minutes. So that is going to be it for today. I'd just like to take a moment to say thank you to everybody that has joined us today for the call. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and listen to what our team have to say. Thank you to everyone that's dropped in questions. Our team have been capturing all of the questions we didn't get time to go through. And as I said, we will be following up with the recording of today's webinar with that email address again and the instructions on how to request a free 1-hour security review with the team. And we'll come back with that additional information. And also, Cameron, Damien, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule today to talk through what those case studies mean and how small businesses can start to get their heads around some of those issues that have been raised. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll hopefully speak to all of you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.